Now, the next laptop we're about to look at has been the most polarizing laptop, unnecessarily in my opinion, for a lot of people. And I saw a lot of reviews on it that were really unnecessarily negative on it. In fact, I think it's one of the best laptops here of 2024. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it might be the best laptop in a lot of ways. It has a stunning design, it's got amazing battery life, it's got a stunning display, there's no other words to describe it, and it's got really good performance overall. I think it's one of the best 14-inch laptops out there. Yes, I'm talking about the Dell XPS 14 9440, brand new for 2024. In fact, some of these reviews that I saw didn't even mention one of its biggest strengths, and that was battery life, which really surprised the heck out of me. Now, if you're one of those people that are upset that they do not have a physical function row, went with a capacitive row, and you don't like the keyboard and you don't like the haptic touchpad, well, maybe this is not the laptop for you. Don't waste your time on this video. Move on to the next laptop. I have a lot of other reviews. Check out the links in the description below, all the playlists on my channel. There will be something for you, I guarantee it. But for those of you that want a stunning laptop in pretty much every way, this is the laptop to look at here in 2024. Hey everybody, it's Andrew, and this is my review of the Dell XPS 14 9440 here for 2024. Coming up. Now, before we get to the unit itself, I just want to let everyone know, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I'm not being paid by Dell. I'm not being sponsored by Dell. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Dell is not getting copy approval. That means they're seeing this video for the first time, just like you. Now, this unit is on loan from Dell, and once this review is done, I'll be sending it back. Now, pricing for the XPS 14 has actually gone down recently, down to $14.99 for the starting configuration, up to $23.99 as configured here today. That's 32 gigabytes of RAM, a terabyte of storage on that RTX 4050 with the 3.2K OLED display. The XPS 16 also got a significant price decrease, and this is a good trend. Now, before you jump down Dell's throat, if you look at a similarly equipped MacBook Pro, that comes in the same price, $23.99, but you get a far less for your money. 18 gigabytes of unified memory, where you get 32 gigabytes here, and you also get upgradable storage here. So you don't have to actually go with the highest end here if you don't want to. You can actually upgrade it yourself and save a few bucks, and that's something you can't do with a MacBook Pro because everything is soldered into the motherboard, unlike the Dell, where you have upgradable storage. But don't get me wrong, I still think this is a very expensive product, maybe a little too high, even after these price reductions, but it is a positive sign that Dell has really reduced these prices already, and hopefully will reduce them even more. So, without further ado, you know the drill, folks. Let's get this out of the box. Okay, so this is typical packaging we've seen before, so let's just move right along here. Nothing here. I don't think there's anything else. Boom. Let's get rid of this box. Boom. Okay. Welcome to Dell. Let's do great things together. We'll see. All right. Right off the bat, we get some documentation. All right. You can see it here. This is the paperwork, of course. We've seen this a million times already. Let's just see what this is. This is a XPS 14 9440, and I don't know, regulatory information, yada, yada, yada. All right, we got the little, you know what, this little adapter here, this little hub, and this one is going to give you HDMI, it's going to give you USB-A. You know, say what you want. They do include that in the box, so that's a good sign. I mean, look, Apple doesn't give you anything in their box. You're lucky to even get an adapter. So this is the power cord. We've seen that a million times, and a pretty compact adapter here. In fact, this is 100 watts, right? So USB Type-C, 100-watt adapter, and that is obviously very compact. We're going to keep this out. We're going to keep it for our measurement of the weight, and of course, this is what we came here for. This is the product itself. Now, this is the XPS 14. Has a little bit of heft here. You can see it on the side here. It's a pretty nice feeling. It's a very substantial feeling. Very little give in the lid here, in the chassis. It's actually really rock solid. Oh, hardly any give on the display. No flex on the display. Very, very nice. Very, very premium feel. Let's do the useless test of the day. You know what that is. It's the one-handed open test. It is all aluminum and glass, of course. You can see it here. Wow. So this is the graphite, and let's get a look at the back lid over here. Very, very nice. 1.774 kilograms, and that is 3 pounds, 14.6 ounces. Now, let's get a travel weight. This is the power cord, pretty compact power adapter. That brings it up to 2.091 kilograms, and that is 4 pounds, 9.5 ounces. A pretty nice package to take with you on the go, especially if you want to do things like video editing in DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro. This is definitely going to get the job done. You get 2 USB Type-C Thunderbolt 4 ports that are full function, supporting data, charge, and display out. On the right side, you get a micro SD card reader, not a full size, so just keep that in mind. You get another USB Type-C, I believe it's also a Thunderbolt 4 port, and it should also be full function, and a 3.5 millimeter microphone headphone combo jack. And of course, you do get that dongle in the box that gives you HDMI and USB-A. Now, this has the same zero lattice keyboard as on the XPS 16, its bigger sibling. I absolutely loved it on there, and I do love it here on the XPS 14. The tactility, the key travel, and the overall feedback has been surprisingly very good and very satisfying. I like typing out long documents on this. Emails and the like have worked out really well. It has a multi-stage backlight that worked well. I had no issues with it. Now, it does have the capacitive row. I'm not the biggest fan of that capacitive row. I know a lot of people are angry that Dell took away the physical keys instead of the function row. You get this capacitive row. Now, one thing to note about the capacitive row, that there is no haptic feedback on it. That would be nice that if they can add that later on next year, maybe. That would be really welcome addition. In addition to that, it also turns off after 5 minutes of inactivity. That's something different than we saw on the XPS 13 Plus from last year, and that's a welcome improvement as well. Say if you're watching a movie, you don't get the really glaring light from the capacitive row to annoy you. You can actually, it turns off, of course, after 5 minutes. Now, as far as the haptic touchpad, it's a glass haptic touchpad, and I checked in the settings. The review unit that I have is the one that has a Sensil haptic touchpad, and if you know anything about Sensil, they make excellent haptic engines, excellent haptic touchpads. We saw it on the Lenovo ThinkPad line. We saw it on the Microsoft Surface Laptop Studio and stuff like that. They're doing a fantastic job, and it's evident here in a much improved haptic touchpad over, say, the XPS 13 Plus. Now, the XPS 16 has the same Sensil haptic touchpad. I thought they did a fantastic job there. It's here on the XPS 14. When it comes to scrolling, when it comes to doing all the gestures, everything worked really well. It was spot on. And as I mentioned earlier, the storage here is upgradable. You can replace the SSD and go for higher storage if you need to, something you can't do on the MacBook. But as you can see, the included 1 terabyte SSD in my review unit has some excellent reads and writes. Certainly what we'd like to see here in 2024, certainly fast enough for what you need this laptop to do. Now, unfortunately, like most laptops here in 2024, the RAM is soldered into the motherboard, not upgradable by the user. Now, if you go with the base configuration with the Intel Arc graphics, that comes with the slower RAM. It's going to be the 6400 megahertz RAM as opposed to the faster 7467 megahertz that you'd get if you go with the ones with the RTX 4050 discrete GPU. And that's what we have here with our review unit. And the benefit of it being soldered in, if there is a benefit, of course, is the ability to run that faster RAM. And of course, it is running in dual channel mode. If it's slotted in, it can't run quite as fast. So there is a give and take here. There is a trade-off, but having the faster RAM is certainly the silver lining here in 2024. There's no doubt about it. Now, unlike its bigger sibling, the XPS 16, which has the killer Wi-Fi 7 option, here you get the killer Wi-Fi 6E, which is a curious decision made here by Dell. Why didn't they go with the more future-proof Wi-Fi 7, just like they did on the XPS 16? I'm not really sure. Maybe it's a cost-saving measure. Again, I don't really have that answer. But having said that, the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth have both been working flawlessly here so far. No issues with either one, but I would like to see killer Wi-Fi 7 making a little bit more future-proof, and you can't upgrade it yourself since it is soldered into the motherboard, which is a bit unfortunate. Now, if I had a choice, of course, always go with this 3.2K OLED display. That's the option I would choose any day of the week. I know it's a little bit of a premium, but it is worth the money in my opinion. It is absolutely stunning. It's a 14.5-inch 3.2K display, 3200 by 2000. It's a touch display. It's got Dolby Vision. It's also got a variable refresh rate up to 120 hertz, a big improvement over last year. And to me, this display is simply stunning. Now, if you're going to watch movies and Netflix, Amazon YouTube, high dynamic range content looked really fantastic on this. And if you're going to do content creation in Lightroom, Photoshop, video editing, so the color gamut has been excellent in the terms of the coverage. As far as the color accuracy, spot on here. It's got all the hallmarks of an OLED display, the really deep blacks, the super vibrant colors, and the really high contrast. It's all there. Now, as far as this display, it has a touch layer, of course, as I mentioned. That's great for pinch to zoom, navigating the OS with your finger. I love having that option, something you can't do on the MacBook Pro, unfortunately. And unlike the MacBook Pro, this has the micro-thin bezels without a notch. You don't have that hideous eyesore. Here it looks sleek and modern with those micro bezels. And you gotta love the look here. It just gives off a very positive vibe. I really love this display. Now, if there's a downside to an OLED display, it could be screen burn-in after time, although I haven't experienced it on any of the XPS models with the OLED displays in years past. I don't expect it on this one. They do put a screensaver on there after a certain timeout. That certainly helps. And also, brightness is capped out at 400 nits. I actually measured slightly above 400 nits, 402 nits here, so it doesn't get quite as bright as, say, a mini LED as you get on the MacBook Pro. But having said that, I really do prefer the OLED displays with their super deep blacks and those really vibrant colors that seem to pop off the display. 1080p IR camera, that means you can log in with face recognition with Windows Hello. Do have a pretty nice camera here, 1080p, which of course is an improvement over the 720p we saw on the XPS line in the previous years. So this is a nice improvement, a welcome improvement indeed. Now, this has a NPU, it's a Meteor Lake processor, so the studio effects are here, or the AI enhanced effects. So you got the auto framing. This will always keep you in frame. Let's see if this, if I move around. Yep, there it goes. That works. Okay, let's turn that off. You got the eye contact. That, of course, allows you to keep your eye focused on the subject. And then, of course, the background blur effect, the standard blur, and the portrait blur. And I think it's a pretty decent job here overall. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. What do you think about the video quality? What do you think about the audio quality? And I think it's pretty impressive. They put an IR camera 1080p in such a small bezel. So kudos to Dell on that. Okay, let's talk performance, and this is certainly going to do better in the multi-core and the graphics department than the MacBook Air that I recently reviewed. That's not a big surprise there, and that is because this has the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4050 discrete GPU, which has 30 watts of power according to Dell, although when you look at the NVIDIA control panel, it actually has 40 watts of maximum graphics power, so I'm not sure if Dell's limiting that to save on battery and certainly the heat and generation, all that stuff. But anyway, performance as far as multi-core and GPU are very good on this. There's no doubt about it. Now, when I ran the Cinebench 2024 and compared it to that MacBook Air, that did, of course, better, 141 versus 101 here. So the MacBook, of course, will have the better single-core performance, but we're seeing better multi-core, better GPU performance from the XPS 14. Not a big surprise when you compare it to the MacBook Air. And when you compare it to the base model of the MacBook Pro running the M3 chipset, that has better single core, not a big surprise again, but not quite as good multi-core and not quite as good GPU as the XPS 14, which is superior in that department. And we're seeing a very similar result when I ran the Cinebench 2024 versus that baseline MacBook Pro 14. And things get a little bit more interesting when you go with the MacBook Pro, with the M3 Pro with the 12-core CPU and the 18-core GPU. That's a $2,400 model compared to this one, of course. That's going to have better single-core, better multi-core, but not quite as good GPU performance from these scores here, unless you're looking at the Metal score, which is optimized for the Mac. But the overall takeaway is that's going to get you better performance on that MacBook Pro for the most part, although not quite as good GPU for the most part as well. And the same could be said about that Cinebench 2024 results here. Better single core, better multi-core, and even a slightly less GPU on that one. So again, it's a little bit more even in terms of the performance here. But the XPS 14 9440 certainly holds its own against the MacBook Pro here. Now, I'm very interested in video editing on the go with this XPS 14, so I ran the Puget Bench DaVinci Resolve benchmark, and it scored 1,077. Not quite as good, of course, as its bigger sibling, the XPS 16, which scored 1,517, which is not a big surprise. That has a better GPU, the RTX 4070 with 60 watts of power versus the RTX 4050 with 30 watts here, or maybe 40, depending on which benchmark you're looking at. But either way, this is a good result for video editing. I didn't see any hiccups in scrubbing processing through the timeline in DaVinci Resolve or the render itself work pretty well here. Now, I wouldn't characterize this as a gaming laptop per se, but having the RTX 4050 gives you a little bit of a boost in terms of the graphics of, say, over something like the Intel Arc. So if you go with the GPU option, you will get very playable frame rates on certain titles if you lower the settings as indicated by these results here. Now, remember, you could always add an external GPU thanks to the 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports that this has. And when I ran the TimeSpy stress test to see if this will thermal throttle under heavy load, it got a passing score of 98.8%, meaning it detected very little, if any, thermal throttling, and that's a good thing. And even more good news when it comes to the surface temperatures under load, never going above 38, 39 degrees Celsius, above the keyboard, below the display, meaning it maintained relatively cool performance here even throughout. And that is really good. Even on the underside, never heating up to the point where it's too hot, stayed relatively cool as well. This is impressive, especially for a thin and light chassis. And when it comes to fan noise, never going above 45, 46 decibels, meaning it stayed relatively quiet even under heavy load. But when you're in the Dell optimized or balanced mode, it was not much of an issue. Now, very little credit was given to Dell in a lot of the reviews I saw on the XPS line, of course, this year, unfortunately. But in my review of the XPS 16, one of the biggest highlights was the massive battery gains here we're seeing year over year. In fact, it was pretty phenomenal. That had that 99.5 watt-hour battery. This one has a 70 watt-hour battery. Not quite as good, of course, to be expected here, but very good for a 14-inch laptop with a discrete GPU and a 3.2K OLED display with 120 hertz enabled here. 10 hours and 21 minutes on the PC Mark X Modern Office test, over 12 hours on the video playback, hour and a half in gaming, but the overall takeaway is excellent battery life here with the XPS 14, and not enough credit has been given to Dell on the XPS line here for 2024 as far as longevity in battery life here. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. In fact, there were reviews out there that didn't even mention battery life at all, which I found very curious. Now, when it comes to the audio, you're looking at quad speakers here, and there's a total of 8 watts of total peak power, and I thought the volume was really good here. In fact, it was even louder in some ways than the MacBook Pro. Doesn't necessarily mean better than the MacBook Pro, but certainly loud enough. There's no doubt about it. I don't think the fidelity is quite as good as the MacBook Pro, which I think is the best in the business. It's the top of the heap as far as I'm concerned, but I think this certainly holds its own, especially for a Windows laptop here in 2024. Thought the sound was very good. Now, I want you to be the judge. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. Now, let's give them a listen. Okay, let's wrap it all up. What do I think about the XPS 14 here for 2024? I love its stunning design. It's absolutely gorgeous 3.2K OLED display. The 120 hertz refresh rate is a welcome improvement. This excellent haptic trackpad, especially the one made by Sensel. It is evident here on my review unit. Quiet, cool performance, surprisingly good keyboard, very good 1080p webcam, and Dell has now lowered the price, making it a little bit more palatable, but it is still expensive at the end of the day. But it is a premium flagship nonetheless. Negatives, of course, is the RAM is not upgradable here. Of course, not a big surprise in 2024. Micro SD card reader instead of the full-size SD card reader. No HDMI or USB-A port, although they do include that dongle in the box, something Apple would never do, of course. On the heavy side, a little bit on the heavy side for a 14-inch laptop, although still very portable nonetheless. It is expensive, although, like I said, the prices come down, and no haptic feedback on the capacitive row. I'm not the biggest fan of that capacitive row, but it wasn't a big issue issue to me. It wasn't a deal breaker, and it would be nice to have that haptic feedback. And coders may miss the physical escape key, but that is a very segmented part of the audience. I'm not sure if the person looking at this is going to be that a coder or somebody in that department, so just keep that in mind. But the overall takeaway is the Dell XPS 14 is stunning in looks, has an absolutely stunning display, has some good performance here, an excellent battery life, and overall great travel laptop, especially if you want to get work done on the road and say video editing and stuff like that. This is one of my favorite laptops here for 2024. It has been unnecessarily bashed by a lot of other reviewers, and I think this earns my editor's choice here for 2024 as being one of the best 14-inch laptops on the market right now. So please hit the like button, please subscribe, please share this video. Don't forget to leave a comment in that comment section below. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if there's a device or something out there you think I should review. I'll do my best to try to make that happen. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. And don't forget to check out my website, amdtechreviews.com. So until next time, this is Andrew, and I'll see you in the next video.